Welcome to the Divorce Podcast, where we explore all aspects of ending relationships, separation, and parenting apart. If your marriage or partnership has ended, or you have friends and family who are separating, this podcast is for you. I'm Kate Daly, a relationship counsellor, divorce specialist, and co-founder of Amicable, the online legal service for separating couples. In each episode, we look at relationships and separation from different angles, including the emotional, legal, and social. I'm joined by experts and special guests who share their own unique stories, experience, and tips, with the goal of helping people end relationships in a kinder and better way. In this episode, I was joined by Ella Kenion to talk about her experience of divorce and co-parenting. Ella has enjoyed a long and varied career as an actor, working successfully across both stage and screen for many years. We'll include full details in the show notes of where Ella has featured. However, some of the highlights include the BBC's The Outlaws, Doctors, and the Detectorists, as well as ITV's Midsomer Murders and the feature film The Night Before Christmas. Ella spoke candidly about her two divorces, the first being the pinnacle of amicable and the second being far from it. We explored her co-parenting arrangements, and I particularly loved the fact that whilst Ella's second divorce was not at all amicable and went through a lengthy court proceeding, they were able eventually to establish a really good co-parenting relationship. If you loved this episode, then please subscribe and rate us on your preferred listening platform. Welcome, Ella.
Hello, Kate.
Hi, it's fabulous to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here to talk about divorce and separation. And like me, you are an expert in the sense that you are part of the Double D Club, having had
in the Double D Club with you.
2 divorces. So it's lovely to speak to a fellow expert. And so, Ella, one of the things that we're asking our guests to do at this part of the podcast is just to tell us what your separation song is and why.
Separation song would be Harry Styles' Sign of the Times, because that was a Christmas present from my godmother to my son at the time that we divorced, and we played it constantly as we toured around the theatres in the north. I just love it, even though it makes me sob. I absolutely love it.
Sounds like an ideal breakup song, so thank you very much for that. I wonder whether you can just give us a little bit of background, a little bit of a flavour of those relationships. So you were married twice, so tell us a little bit about what married life was like for you each time before the relationships ended.
So with the first one, we were really good mates, and we'd been together for about 5 or 6 years, and we sort of thought, we should get married. It was a bit like Better Call Saul, Kim and Jimmy. It seemed to make sense. And we got married, huge mistake, just didn't work. And within months, it had gone wrong. And I felt terrible because I just knew this was a mistake and I had to get out. And fortunately, I have no contact with him now, unlike I think every other ex I have. I've got some sort of contact, but with this, I think it was sort of broken heart. So, but with that divorce, we literally, because it was 1998, we bought The Witch Guide to Divorce, which, by the way, I've tried to find and can't. And we sat around the kitchen table. We spent 120 quid on the divorce, and we just worked it out. He was a police officer. I didn't go after his police pension. We didn't have children. And I had a little bit of money from my granny who died in a car crash, and he didn't go after that. We just agreed. We weren't happy about it, and he was very upset, but we really managed a fantastic, amicable, dreamy divorce, frankly. And then soon after, I had a relationship with a very scary South African. I'm going to kill your cat.
Oh my God.
He was very mad. He was very, very mad. And in the end, I phoned, they're both called Andy, my husband's, which is quite irritating. I phoned Andy Mark 1 and said, I'm actually really scared and I don't know what to do. And, and he was, considering that must have been really hard to hear that I'd already met somebody. And he gave me a lethal looking, it was like a baseball bat, but not quite. Anyway, and he sort of sat outside my abode for a bit. I was kind of homeless for quite a long time, so I was staying in other people's houses, and he would very sweetly protect me from this chap who in the end ended up stalking me. It was just a nightmare. But, it's interesting. You sort of I think I felt guilty about messing up a perfectly friendly, lovely marriage. And I think subconsciously I might have chosen something really appalling to kind of punish myself. Or I don't know. I mean, maybe I kind of haven't. Yeah, I just think it's all good now. It's all good now. Yeah, so that was the end of that one. And then 10 years later, exactly 10 years later, I had various crazy relationships, usually with struggling artists of some sort. And I remember someone saying, why doesn't an actor look out of the window in the morning? Well, because he needs something to do in the afternoon. So there was a lot of that, really, and always me sort of funding everybody because I had a career that was sort of chugging along quite nicely. And then I went to this party for TK Maxx as a sort of Z-list celebrity for their comic relief thing. And there was a sea of suits. And I never go to parties with suits. They're always, boho and smelling of BO. So I was really excited. And I said as a joke, to my girls, right, I am off to get a husband. It's been 10 years. It's time. And I sort of waded into these suits. I don't know what I thought was going to do. And towering above everybody else was a lovely chartered surveyor I'd gone out with when I was about 18. And he's 6'7". So, of course, I saw him. And, and he waved me, they talk like that. There's no consonants. Very Boris. And we were chatting away and I looked and I noticed, right, he's married. Okay, checking the rings. But he was talking to somebody who looked rather nice and he had lovely blue eyes and he was, nice big guy and he was in a suit, I thought, oh. And we chatted a bit and he said he liked the theatre and I noticed there was no wedding ring. And I said, where do you live? And I thought, if he lives in Clapham,
or closer,
or near the Sloane Pony, you know what I mean? Or and I was thinking like, you'll be one of those Hooray Henry, I didn't really. So I was kind of hoping he might live because I'm a North London girl, I was hoping he might be Camden or something. Anyway, he said he lived in Belsize Park. And I thought, ooh. And then I kept asking, I couldn't hear his name. And he kept saying both the things together. I won't say it, but anyway, turns out I thought it was Hagrid, essentially. So I go home. I dropped him off in Belsize Park. I don't really drink, so I dropped him off. And I came home to my little place, my little council place I'd bought. And I rang my dad in the middle of the night. I said, Dad, that's it. I've met who I'm going to marry.
Oh, wow.
And he took a moment and said, again? I said, yes, all right. But actually, he's lovely. He's really lovely. He seems funny and he laughs at my jokes and he seems really sweet and he's a grown-up and he's got a job and everything. Yeah. So obviously everybody's very behind it. Anyway, then I meet, and I'm calling him Hagrid for about a month, Kate. Honestly, kept calling him Hagrid. And eventually he told me, it's not actually my name. But it's interesting because that was indicative of how much he can't cope with conflict or
so even
an
to the point of not
thing.
being able to say, actually, my name is,
that's not my name. I mean, really? You can't even say that? So, and we got pregnant very quickly, intentionally, because I was 38, I think. And that was great. And we had my gorgeous boy and we did everything sort of the wrong way around. So we married. No, we got pregnant, then we got married, then we moved in together, and then we bought a house. It all went very arse about face. Anyway, so we end up in the gorgeous Muswell Hill. I am now the happiest I have ever been. I'm finally getting some weight off. I'm working at the National. The boy is great. The only thing that's a little bit tricky is that he's just a bit scary. Now we get to know the husband. Little bit scary and very distant. But I was so overexcited that I'd married somebody who could afford their own Oyster card that I didn't really see the signs. I really didn't. And he was awfully shouty with the boy particularly. And I found that difficult because I kind of, you kind of think, well, whatever, you can be cross with me. But it was weird because it was more menacing than shouting. It's just quite scary and difficult to get him to look you in the eye and stuff like that. And I think we just crashed on into marrying and having a baby. And this all happened so we met in March and we'd had the baby by the following February. This was really quick. And then it got to a point where my family was saying, it's interesting, it was on one of your other podcasts about that, but just maybe tucking some money aside if I needed to make a quick exit. And I was thinking, what are you talking about? I was so offended. And they were saying he's never around. I said, yeah, because he's got this job where he goes to like Poland and all these other countries. And I don't really understand what he does, but, it seems really important. And again, I raised the suit, and I was like, and I'm so lucky because I can do my acting, except I couldn't because I was finding that wasn't really happening. I wasn't really allowed, or I don't know, I can't really explain it. It just, I had to be home. That's fine. And then I was really worried because he would kind of disappear. And when he was away, he just wasn't one of those people. He would never, ever ring us. But every single morning of our life, he would send a text, morning, love you, boo, every single morning, wherever he was in the world, I say the world, it turned out to be East Dulwich, but anyway, so wherever he was, so it was, in the morning, great. But in terms of, contact with the child, he didn't ring to say night to the boy or, there was none of that. And then about, I would say 2-3 years before everything ended, and so we're about 7 years into the marriage, he disappeared one bank holiday weekend and said it was that he was going off to survey some properties. And I said, but you hate driving on a bank holiday weekend. This is so weird. Yeah, I'm doing that. And my mum and my best friend were like screaming at me, are you sure? Are you sure there's not something else or someone else? And I was so offended. I just thought, he is the squarest man I've ever met. It's one of the reasons I chose him is because he's so safe and sort of dozy and sort of, there's no way that's going on. However, he is permanently angry with me and I've no idea why. And I just kept trying harder and harder and harder and trying to work out what to do right. Anyway, eventually, when he got back from that weekend, I said, okay, nobody's going to bed until we've sorted this out, which was really brave of me because I don't normally talk like that. And eventually he admitted that he was very depressed. And so what he'd actually been doing was sort of driving around trying to get his head together because he was so very depressed. So then I was like, right, well, that makes sense. Okay, so we need to get you to the GP. We need to get you on some. He's like, sometimes I just black out in the car. And I was like, oh my God. I said, because often you come back and you just sit in the car for like ages on the phone. And, and I'm still not putting 2 to 2 together because I'm that stupid. Anyway, so now I'm like, right, this all makes sense. And we're making huge allowances for the moods and everything. And about 2 years after that, it's New Year's Eve. We're watching The Crown, which I've never seen since.
Drama show. Yeah.
We're watching The Crown and he's shaking in the seat. And I thought, oh my God. And he said, I've got something to tell you.
Oh
and I
my God. Yeah.
He's got cancer. He's going to have cancer or something awful. He's going to die. Oh my God. What is it? And he said, I have been having an affair and there is a child as the result of the affair.
Oh gosh.
Right. So, right. Just trying to think. So this woman is pregnant and, oh no, the child is 2.
Oh.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Oh. Right. Could you just take our son out for a moment? I just need to gather my thoughts. So he did. Oh, and one of the things he said as he left was, well, at least our boy's old enough and it won't affect him. He was 9. And he also said, I don't know what to do. As in which of you?
Oh no.
He'd been going out with her for 6 years.
Please help me choose.
6 years. Oh, I can't imagine what advice I can give you.
The other lady.
It will not be me. It will not be me. Anyway, he rushed off. My gorgeous best friend arrived within 45 minutes with a box of chocolates and drinks and countless I told you so's, but was very good about it. And then gradually things unfolded. And I went off on tour. Our boy wasn't happy with the nanny because I got a nanny just while I was on tour because I thought, how's that going to work? And it was only a short summer thing. But in the end, they came with me. And then in the end, I was like, no, dispatch the nanny. I'll just keep the boy. And then we had a brilliant time sort of having put it on pause, really. And we just had this crazy time on tour doing Dusty, which was so much fun. And he had a blast in the room with the dancers. And, it was absolutely fantastic. Then, of course, we come back and it's like, oh, reality. And our lovely friends up the road let us stay in their little stably barn thing. So with the sort of loo that you machinate, you do things in a paper bag.
Yeah.
It was
basic.
It was a change from the very smart village we'd lived in. But it's all right. And then the divorce, and it was hard work because he didn't want to name the lady.
Right. So these are back in the days before no fault divorce where you had to.
Yeah. Well, actually, was it? I think it was a year before no fault divorce. I don't think it was, because it was 2018. And there were times in those financials where there were huge sums going. So no wonder he's getting angry and, and all the rest of it. That was really horrible because, and I know that this is a positive podcast, you really want to work through all that to try and find a way, and what I wanted, perfectly honest, I kind of wanted to meet her, to find out if she'd also been lied to, and I wanted to say, look, there's no reason why these boys can't know each other. They're going to want to know each other somehow, blah, blah, blah. But of course, once she depleted our savings, I didn't really feel like that so much anymore. And he said, I kept trying to break it up and she wouldn't let me, blah, blah, blah. And he, obviously demonized her a certain amount. And then I found myself just screaming and crying and all that resentment and screaming at him, don't you feel guilty? And he said, yeah, I feel terrible about what I did to her. What? I'm the one who's married to you. Oh my God. Anyway, so there was quite a lot of that to work through. And we went to a family therapist, and all my son wanted in the whole world was for him to get a paternity test and for him to see a picture of the child at least and to know what the hell was going on. So he kept agreeing. And then the brilliant therapist said, well, obviously we can't make you do the paternity test right now, but I'm assuming you've got a picture on your phone.
Right. Yeah.
And he went, oh, well, well, come on. And I went, is it okay if I have a quick look first before our son? So they let me, and I had to stifle a laugh because I really don't think it's his. I don't know. But it really didn't look like him or my child. Anyway, but who knows? He's still paying for it, so whatever. And he never did the paternity test. We gave up asking. He said he wouldn't come to therapy anymore. He didn't want to pay for the therapy anymore. Anyway, we worked it all out. We managed to get divorced within about a year. It was January 25th. It was all done and dusted. There were some awful, nasty, horrid moments. And what I found was the best thing was actually, because it was so inflammatory, the solicitor's letters were so inflammatory. So I would say, look, hang on, before you actually write that, I know you have to and send that to his solicitor, can I just ring him? So I tried to stay in touch with him a lot through that, and it was a good move.
So to try and damp down the sort of awfulness of it just landing.
You're going to be asked. Yeah. You're going to be asked this. It's going to feel horrible, but the reason is this, and we kept saying, please, can there be a test? Please, can there be a test? And I don't know why we sort of hung on to that. I think because it was just so awful to think. And for me, I mean, to put a drop of the emotional thing in, for me, even now, 5 years later, the thought of him in a labour ward with another woman having a baby, I mean, I can't even tell you, that never gets any easier to think about. And I had a good 2 years of feeling like I just had no skin on. I was so raw, and then you time and, you muscle on, but I still feel I can't, I've met a couple of people and, it doesn't go anywhere. I'm just like, I can't deal with it. And he's very present. So at the moment, the arrangement is that I have sole custody, except that wasn't, because it was at a time where you didn't say that. They didn't get involved.
No, you don't. There's no such thing as custody anymore. So you have parental responsibility, but you can be the parent who has the majority of the care of the child or with whom they're resident.
Yes. So he's resident with me. And I think that's why the arrangement was quite good in my favour. But I assumed he'd want to like see him at weekends or, you know, and I've had to really push that. I've had to say, come on, take him for lunch or something. And now they like that and they've got a good relationship. And the other day I wanted to go off to the RSC for a couple of nights. And I said, you know, why don't you just go and stay there for a couple of nights? And we finally got the PS4 set up over there, you know,
Yes.
and he's never shown any interest in sort of moving this way, except finally this year, finally he is a bit interested in coming a bit nearer the boy. And then, so he stayed over there and he came out and I said, so, you know, and he went, yeah, no, it was all right. I said, oh, good. Did you have good talks and stuff? I mean, yeah, you know, don't talk about anything real, but we had a good chat. And I thought, great. But I think what frustrates me on the money thing, as well as the raising a child thing on your own, it's like, I just don't think he knows about, you know, the birthday things where you have to slip 20 quid or whatever it is into the car. You know, there's so many things. Oh, I'm going here with my friends after, right? And it's just in your pocket all the time, isn't it? But he, you know, he wants to pay for the child to go to a private school. So I'm like, right, so then what do you do? Because that's loads of money, isn't it?
And then they're doing their bit technically, aren't they? You're just kind of thinking, oh my goodness.
And then it really looks good. So in fact, he does not pay what the court agreed. However, I agreed with him and said, yeah, of course, reduce it with, you know, lockdown, all that sort of thing. I completely understand. And then the lawyers called me back like a year later and said, just wanted to check. He has put it back because we agreed for 3 months he'd reduce it. And then he has put it. I said, oh, no, he hasn't. And, right, let's do letter of intent. Let's get going. And I went, no, wait, how about if I just ask for a pay slip and we'll see whether he could again, because maybe he can't. Biggest mistake I ever made, Kate. It took me over a year to get him back in the place where I'd got him and get him nice to us. And, you know, and now it's good. He still pays a little bit less, but actually he said, because I wanted to quiz him last night. I did not say I was doing this podcast, but I wanted to say, how would you describe our divorce now, like, and our relationship? And he said, yeah, I mean, we get on really well. It's amicable. You know, we talk about these things and, you know, and I know you don't like to hear it, but, you know, your money will be reduced shortly when he goes to university. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So, you know, it works.
I think you're expressing something. No,
hours?
I think you're expressing something that's really important and that lots of us have exactly the same issue. There is what your order ultimately says on that piece of paper when you've been through a court or whatever, or where you've negotiated it yourself. And then there's real life. And sometimes those things are so different. And as you were just saying then, sometimes it's very difficult to think that it's worth the extra however many hundreds or thousands of pounds getting it versus disrupting the relationship, because you're on such a knife edge with a co-parenting relationship sometimes when it's been born out of kind of the traumatic circumstances that you've, you know, really sort of beautifully described. It's just, it's very difficult to think that, yes, you should go and enforce your right to that child maintenance because, oh my God, as you said, it just can drive a bus through everything and it's sometimes not worth it. So there's a level of pragmatism that you're describing, which is absolutely one of the kind of fuels for co-parenting relationship. And I'm not saying it's right, people don't pay. Clearly it's not right, it's wrong. But
I'm lucky enough.
And you still got to make this work in whatever way you can. We don't have a perfect system. It's deeply frustrating for people, particularly when it perhaps makes the difference between eating and not eating and eating and heating and those things. It's deeply frustrating that we don't have a system that can sort this stuff out without it having to take a huge amount of emotional energy and drain. And yet there is a pragmatism that you're talking about that I completely understand and hear. I've been in a similar situation. Yeah,
and even bringing it up last night and saying, oh, okay, well, I said, just so sort of I can manage my expectations. Because I remember the court order said this and you don't pay that, and that's fine. And I've never, you know, and then he said, yeah, because we'd go back to court and I would be paying you a lot less. I went, oh, okay, well, thank you. And then I find myself doing that. Thank you so much. And then he said, so when he's at uni, you know, that's it. He's gone and he's worked. I went, but he'd come home. He said, no, he needs to get a job then. He'd be a job, he'd be living with friends. I said, how's he going to pay the rent and everything? But yeah, I think it's much better, particularly with this particular type of person who he's incredibly charming and he's not bad looking and, but if you corner him, I really saw the teeth come out just a few times, but never in the marriage. It was interesting. It was very polite. And if it flared, it was terrifying because it was also politely terrifying. But I think I absolutely agree. I am extremely lucky, don't get me wrong. And I there's a wonderful charity, Gingerbread, and I know you've supported them before and you've had them on before I knew what was going on with us. That was one of the charities I supported because I thought, my mum was a single mum, and then I think it's so tough. But I am not in that situation. I'm very lucky that there's still a few residuals coming in from the green grass or Doctor Who. So.
But, again, that one of the things you're talking about is one of the roads out of this. And again, easier to say than do. And I'm not being sort of twee about it, is if you can get to a place of financial independence, it gives you the choice that you're expressing, doesn't it? And, a lot of people want to get into a situation where they're paid maintenance or whatever and prioritize that over other things. And I sometimes think that actually getting a lump sum and having a clean break and moving away so that you've got that financial independence, so you're not beholden to people every month, is massive.
I think the lump sum thing is so good. I think if I really do, I've got friends who are going through it at the moment, and it's just a nightmare. And there's no children involved, but one has looked after his finances better than the other. And he's just so upset that having bailed out his partner that many times, even with the tax bills and everything, he's like, but I'm the one who looked after. The other one squandered it all. And yet I'm the one who's going to have to pay for that, And it's so hard to make sense of that. But I just think, when I talk about that first divorce was so easy. And then it's just so hard when you've got to see them, and I said, my aunt is incredible. I mean, she had a terrible marriage. Sorry, but she really did. And she managed every birthday, for the children. They were together when they did graduation. I mean, we've been trying to do that, actually. I'm 55 on Thursday, and on Saturday, he's taking both of us to see Sunset Boulevard. When it was his birthday, I took him and the boy to see Moulin Rouge. We're trying to just, keep things positive because it really does help.
Yeah. Well, you say, you've got a lifetime of being with them. That's the difference. And the same with my first divorce as well. I didn't have children in the first divorce. We spent a very small amount of money. It was all very amicable. I was in a better financial position than he was. So he got the house and we just went our separate ways. And it was obvious within a few months that we'd made a mistake. And we were able just to say, okay, we need to just sort this out. We need to do what we feel is fair, which we did, and then move on. But when you've got children, it makes a very big difference because linked for the rest of your life with that person.
How long ago, if you don't mind me asking, did you divorce?
So I've been divorced 12 years now.
Wow.
So 12 years.
Oh, so they were little.
So they were really small. Mine were really small. Yeah. And so it was very, very much a case of, wow, you have a long, long time to spend with somebody.
You've got so many years ahead to deal with it.
And as you were saying, and even when they get to the point of 18, when technically from a court's perspective and a legal perspective, which upsets so many parents, and I totally understand why, they're not classed as dependent children and then suddenly all bets are off. You are still looking after them. You are still paying for them, and you are, still having to have a relationship with the other parent, because then you get into the whole next stages of their lives where they're going to get boyfriends, girlfriends, potentially have families of their own, and you're going to then be back in the same situation where you want to do things as grandparents together and so on. So,
oh my God, I hadn't even thought about that,
Kate. It just goes on.
Oh my God, no. Yes, you're so right. But you know what's kind of awful about it? And I'm going to be really honest. What he did was just awful. But I would be devastated all over again if he met someone. He's not with this, but you see, she kicked him out 6 weeks after I did. So he's been on his own ever since. And and it's awful because I don't want him. Of course, I really genuinely, I don't. And I know he doesn't want me. He's made that very clear. But why the hell is that? Is it my ego? I don't know. I just would find it, I'd be hurt all over again. So I obviously need to go back to therapy.
Well, I think it's because it puts some distance between you, doesn't it? At the moment, you can still co-parent, and you've still got a sort of that three connection, haven't you? Your son, and him. If someone else comes into that, the possibility is then that becomes diluted. So you might not want him as a romantic partner, but it sounds like you're integrating as co-parents really well, and you're able to go and do nice things together for birthdays and stuff. That then forms a different kind of bond, but nonetheless it's a bond. So when another family comes into that, you're having to reshape all of those bonds, and you got that sort of unknown feeling of who might be coming into your blended family and all of that kind of stuff. So it is tough to navigate, and it is difficult, and I'm not surprised it brings up those kinds of feelings. And yes, in short, you probably need to go back to therapy.
Do you know what I really got into recently? Hypnotherapy.
Oh, okay. Tell us
it's
about
marvelous.
that.
Have you heard of that EMDR?
Yes.
Oh, it's fantastic. I had the most awful stage fright come on me when we were doing Dusty, unsurprisingly, with everything that was going on. And it brought up something I remember from being a kid and being forced on stage in a panto, because my granny's an actor, my dad, everybody's an actor. And they clearly wanted to push me into it. Anyway, they were doing some song on stage in this panto, and they, all the little kids, come on, it was Waters Meet in Rickmansworth, all the little, so the granny shoved me down. Get down there, get on the stage. I was like, I don't really want to. I was about 6, and I got on stage, and the loud MC with his shiny suit and his microphone was coming up to each of us, and we were to sing chick, 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 chicken, lay a little egg for me. Well, I didn't know that. I'd grown up in Romania. My stepdad was a Foreign Office. I didn't know what was going on. So it got to me with the microphone, and I didn't say anything. And then the whole audience laughed. And it was traumatizing, and I'd sort of forgotten that. And then I just kept thinking about that. And then I couldn't speak on stage. It was terrible. So he did this brilliant EMDR thing.
So just for people that don't know, that's the eye movement desensitization technique, where essentially a therapist asks you to follow their finger, or they tap, they do different things, don't they, in order to try and get you into a slightly different hypnotic state where your consciousness can be freed to go where it wants to go and bring up what it needs to bring up.
Which is fantastic if you are vividly putting yourself into that. So you have to really think yourself back into that trauma. And the reason I went to this guy for it, because he's very good, actually. He's called Matt Jacobs, and it's londonhypnosis.com. And he was the one who helped. Do you remember the King's Cross fire? And there were some firemen who'd been so traumatized by that, and they just couldn't seem to move past it. And were complaining that going to therapy and talking about it over and over again was like really not helping. So he did EMDR on that, and that really helped them. Anyway, I've not had, touchwood, stage fright since he did that magic
really
thing on
good
me.
for trauma and post-traumatic stress syndrome, isn't it? The whole
PTSD.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wondered if I might do, I thought, is this bonkers? But I thought, do I go about this repeating film in my head of him in the labour ward with her? And I thought maybe I just somehow could numb that, I don't know.
Process it. It sounds like you need to process it, don't you? So you can move on past it and just be able to put it somewhere where it doesn't keep coming back to you the whole time without warning. Because there's a big difference between you wanting to think about something and something coming and intruding at a really inconvenient time, isn't it? It's not that it goes away. It's, can I learn to control it, put it in a box and go to it when I need to or want to go to it?
Exactly, because I swear, you only have to show me any medical drama, where there's any kind of birth baby, and I'm in floods of tears. Yeah. It's really boring after 5 years to find myself still bursting into tears randomly. And although I've taught my son that it's really healthy to be open to our happiness and our sadness as it arises, and we work through it, and we've got a fantastic relationship. And we found this book. I must just tell you this before we found this book. Oh my God. I thought, why is this in the passport drawer? This is odd. And it was a notebook, and I'd noted down things that my child said in the few months, up to about 12 months since it all blew up. And it says, Mummy, ... and there's me, and I say, well, Daddy is a good man, but he did a very bad thing. And then it's got my child, no, Mum, Daddy is a mediocre man who did a bad thing. And underneath is me in capitals, my son's hilarious. Yes. I mean, how at 9 years old? He's mediocre, Mum. He's mediocre. That. It was brilliant, but it was great to read back. And he looked back at some of it, and then he found it too painful, and he had to give it back to me. He said, I'm going to wait. And if you think, well, he's 15, nearly 16 now, and he did well to read some of it. And some of it was so good. I think when I'm mean to my friends, I think that's Daddy in me. Is that going to be in me forever? And trying to reinforce that there are choices about our behavior. I mean, I do think both my maternal and paternal grannies got divorced. My parents got divorced. I've got divorced. I would really like my son to get it right when he does it, Yeah. But I think people divorce a lot at the moment, don't you? I don't know that there's longevity anymore. I love to hear people who've made a marriage work for years and years and years.
I say this on the podcast practically every week. We're living longer. The chances that we're going to have one significant relationship feel pretty slim. And I think it's okay. I think you can have multiple successful relationships. You may be married in some of them. You may not be married in others. I think it's just one of those things that we have to become better as a nation to dealing with the breakup of a relationship. And I feel a bit crass saying that to you, having listened to the story that you have just delivered, because there are clearly lines where actually there is just some really bad behavior that isn't acceptable, and it's not about a relationship naturally coming to an end. So I get that. But there are relationships for certain points and times in your life, and maybe one of them is around raising children. Maybe there's another in later life when you want to do different things, and it's more important to share values rather than practical time commitments or shared parenting ideas. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's space in the world for people to have multiple relationships.
Yeah. Do you ever find you, because if it comes up that an ex is now split with their wife, and I'm like, hi, still here. Yeah. You know what I mean? I kind of want to go, I always thought we got on really well, and we could just fast track, couldn't we? And I don't have to go through all the stuff.
No way. I never ever look back. I would speak to, obviously, apart from my ex, who's the father of my children, I wouldn't speak to any of my exes ever. I just don't. Even my first love, who I do still love in a sort of weird way, I don't have any contact with. But yeah, no, I absolutely, no.
That's so funny. My first love, Freedom Bremner, he calls himself now. His name's Bill Bremner. And we were boyfriend and girlfriend in high school in America. And we still Zoom and chat to each other frequently. And it got to, in the middle of my life, he had a child with somebody and then they were declared unfit, and she was a drug addict, actually. It was all terrible. And he said, right, it's great. I've worked it all out. So you're going to come and live with me in New York. And that's cool. And we'll marry. And you can help me raise Mason. I was like, right. Or could I just live my life? But we get on fantastic.
Let's just have a drink first.
I love it. I mean, could we just, let's just hang on. Let's just see if we still get on. But no, I'm terrible. Through most of my life, the exes became, if you'll excuse the expression, F buddies for a long time. You know what I mean? And then it's sort of, but without being unfaithful, it sort of worked out that, I've still got all those feelings. So I have to be really careful. I have to not see exes because I feel all the good stuff again. But on the whole, you see, I've done the dumping. So this was, the only person who ever dumped me. Because I told even this guy to go, but the only person who ever dumped me has now become single again. And I was talking about him this morning with someone, and I was like, I can't help it. I just keep thinking I might have to, because I really can't cope with all the socials. I think it makes me feel so less than. I just can't cope with it. So I'm terrible. I never go on Facebook or any of that. But I sort of suddenly thought, my agent does represent him too. Let's find out how he's doing. It's like, stop it, Ella. Terrible.
Maybe it's more glamorous in your walk of life though, because I definitely don't. I can't imagine going back to any of mine.
Maybe. I had to do Dusty with my ex, Rufus Hound. And they said, because we had the same agent, and my agent said, "You going to be all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's fine. We'll get on." And we did. We got on fine. But it was, God, that was, we'd lived together. And last time I'd seen him, him, he was sobbing on the kitchen floor as I said it was over. And then the next time we're, in a rehearsal studio, you just got to crack on, really. But, it's terrible. But yes, I think I would be much more frightened of my ex-husband if I hadn't got things to this amicable and civil point.
I think you've done an amazing job in getting there under extreme circumstances. I think lots of people have kind of quite awful sort of breakup stories, but that really kind of takes the biscuit, I think. And to say that you have got to this place where you can, actively co-parent your son, I think is amazing. And I think you generally feel like I need to give you a big round of applause, a big amicable hug for that. So
thank you.
Well
I was going
done.
to say I'd rather have a hug.
Yeah,
but thanks.
well, I'll virtually hug you then.
Thank you.
It's incredible.
Thank you,
and it's a
Kate.
real story of hope, because from a real sort of, let's face it, a low bar, you've managed to create something that's working for your child, your son. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's trying to find that little sort of chink, that pathway to be able to do something amazing, even a small thing, from real sort of nothing. From nothing, you've made something amazing out of real crumbs. And I think that's definitely to be applauded. And if you can bottle the secret, please, and tell us, then I will patent it and make a fortune.
No idea. No idea.
It's been wonderful talking to you. What are you up to? Where can people find you, see you at the moment?
Oh, well, usually on catch up in things like I'm Captain Sinker, if you've got little people. I'm Captain Sinker in Swashbuckle, the pirate game show. And I'm on some of the CBBS pantos that crop up. So Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan. And I'm the new headmistress in So Awkward, which is on CBBC. And then you can find me in Catherine Tate's show and Green Green Grass, which are constantly being repeated somewhere. And I'm terrible with the socials, so don't bother with that. But you can find me on Instagram. Just remember my name's spelled Kenion. That's it.
Fabulous. Well, look, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. I'm not brilliant on some of the socials, but I am on X. I'm at Kate_Daly. And if you want to hear about new podcast episodes, you can subscribe for updates by visiting thedivorcepodcast.com on your favourite listening platform. So, Ella, thank you so much for your candour and your humour. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening.